Welcome to another episode of moTV. I'm so excited about this episode. We've got a guest who's, if I could have tailor-made the right guest, the perfect fit for Mo Mondays, I would have come up with Laura Gassner Otting, also known as LGO to her friends. She spent the last 20 years interviewing people, not just about what they do and how they do it, but why they do it. She's endlessly intrigued by the human story. Okay, are you beginning to get the message? Perfect for Mo Mondays. She she is just thrilled to kind of discover that moment that each of us what it drives us to do what we do, why we do it, and of course how we do it, what sets us apart from everybody else. And she's thrilled to talk about it. Just before the show, she was saying, wow, I'm so happy to hear we're going to be talking about this, because normally that's what I talk to other people about. Stick around. We'll be right back with Laura Gassner Otting. Welcome to Mo Mondays, Laura.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Did you hear the introduction?
I heard the introduction. I was over here blushing.
Well, you know a little bit about Mo Mondays. You've poked around the Mo Mondays community at community.momondays.com. And so you know that we are all about story. We're all about what drives us, what motivates us to do what we do and why we do it. And like, I'm reading your bio and I'm saying, wait a minute, this is us. This is us. So I'm curious, how long have you known about this about yourself?
Oh, about my love of people's stories?
Yeah.
Ah, you know, it's very interesting. I came to really love people's stories when I worked in executive search and I would interview people and I would listen to their stories. And it's funny because I started off that career, I was in my mid 20s. And I remember very early in my career, one of the vice presidents of the firm walking back into the office at the end of the day, and she looked like, I mean, she just looked shattered. She looked like somebody had, like, run over her puppy or something, and I was like, "Lisa, are you okay? Is everything all right?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm just tired. I've been listening all day long." And I remember thinking, "Listening? Come on, like, listening?" And then I learned how to listen.
Uh,
To, like, really listen, to really listen to people's stories and to hear what they were saying and also what they weren't saying, and to start to pull out of them the things that maybe they don't talk about that often. And I can't tell you how many times in my interview chair people cried, people laughed, people said, "Wow, I've never been asked that question before." And I always felt like that was when we were getting to the really interesting stuff. And the more I got those answers, the more I was like, I want more. I want more. Like I was saying if I was like an evil supervillain, like my power would be that I would like eat people's stories. Like that would be what would give me energy because I love them. I think we're all made up of such unique and interesting stories. So to be able to have the gift and sometimes the burden, but often the blessing of listening to people's stories was so wonderful. But then I look back even before that, and I spent my early career working in politics. So my very first like actual grown up paid job was as a professional was as a political aide. I worked in Bill Clinton's White House. And I look back on it now, having never been asked this question before, and I can say that really my love of story started off with my idealism about the way the world could be and should be, and hearing stories of why politicians run. I still believe in a place called hope, right? That sort of stuff. I think that's probably where it really ignited for me.
wow. Wow, that's pretty quick into the conversation. That's such a great answer. And so I have so many comments. I don't know, you ever have that experience where you've got too many thoughts in your head, but only one mouth to let them out of? Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's called every day that ends with "Y."
So, you mentioned your experience as an executive search professional, and it sounds so similar to my experience. And I started my professional life not an executive search, but as a branding guy, I gained a
Mhm.
reputation as helping the clients that I work with discover their differentiation. So I would listen, 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 listen. And
Mm.
just like you, I'm listening for what's not said and listening for what I call the origin story. What I say is, it's not what you do that sets you apart, but how you do it that sets you apart. That's where differentiation lives. That's a whole other session. But um, that's when I started to realize that people's stories were the explanation for their superpower, but they don't talk about it. They're either afraid to talk about it, or they think it's trivial, or they think it's not important, or it's not professional enough. Now, is that what you found in executive search?
Oh, for sure, absolutely. So the search work that I did was with nonprofit organizations, mission-driven universities, foundations, uh, um, advocacy organizations, and we I would often ask the question, "Tell me a little bit about, your parents. Tell me, what did you get from them? What did you learn from them? Tell me about a teacher who affected you. Was there a coach, if there's somebody telling me if they have, sports in their background, was there a coach who taught you something about yourself?" There's always a person, a diagnosis, a world tragedy, an event, something that sets us on the path that we're on. And what do people know better than anything? What do people like to talk about better than anything? What's everybody's favorite subject? Themselves, right? But sometimes it's hard to get them past the like, these are my pre-screened answers. These are the talking points that I came
This
in
is
with.
what I
But
learned
when
to
you
say
ask,
in an interview.
this is what I learned to say in an interview. But when you ask them further follow-up questions, like they say, like what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Well, I tend to work too hard. Oh, yeah. So what does that look like when you work too hard? Okay, well, it means I sometimes I burn myself out because I'm doing so much because I want things to be perfect for the client. Okay, well, where did you learn that? Does that maybe you have like a parent or a coach, or was there an experience in your youth where somebody taught you to work that hard? And that's when they start telling you the story. And that's when, and I say, like, I don't want to put you on the psychologist couch or
Yeah.
anything, but like, I tend to find that we are past this prologue and we are our stories. And I would love to just know a little bit more about how these things might manifest themselves and what that looks like, because that's really where the richness, that's where it begins. And that's really what I want to hear about. So, personally, I know I came from absolutely, does Anna Retentive have a hyphen type parent? It sounds like you might have a similar experience. Tell me, was there a parent or something? And then they're like, oh, yeah, well, my dad, blah, 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 blah. And that's when you get the stories. And once you get them to open up like that, then they never close back up. The rest of the interview is fantastic.
And do you find that you use those stories in selling those people to your clients?
Oh, I use those stories like in every part of the process. I use those stories to ask further follow-up questions. I use those stories in my reference checks. I don't talk about the stories in the reference checks, but I'll say things like, I know that she's got a, super deeply ingrained whatever, whatever, whatever. And I know it manifests itself in these ways. Can you tell me how that affects the workplace, right? Like I take the stories and then I build on them, because our stories are but data points. And you put enough of them together and then you see a trend line. Sometimes those stories are just a single data point and there's nothing there. But sometimes when you scratch under the surface, you find really big problems. Oh, yeah, when she gets that way, she's a terrible boss and abuses people. Or, yeah, when she gets that way, she reminds us that we actually need to do better because our clients deserve no less, right? It could go one way or another. You don't know. And you make a lot of assumptions, but you gotta use the data point in the reference check then to find out. Then I present them to the clients, of course, using this, because you talk about, this is who they are and this is where they came from. And then you also use it when the person's gonna get an offer and you wanna talk them into taking the job, right? So you cannot help somebody go from point A to point Z if you don't know all the letters in between. And this just helps get there. So it's part of what I do now. I sold that business to my team 5 years ago. Now, as a speaker and a writer, I absolutely do that. I think about, what is my reader thinking about right now? Who is in my audience? Where are they coming from? What kind of background might they have? What's going to move them from here to there? And I've got all these great stories, but what's the hook? what's the front door, how am I going to show them around the house, and then how are they going to leave through the driveway, right? To get them, how do they leave through the gift shop so that I can get them to make the purchase on the way out the door, whatever it is that I need. So really thinking about the story, like we're all just a collection of our own stories.
So let me digress a little bit. Let me just speak to the people in the audience right now, whether you're watching this live or watching a recording of this. If there's a question that you'd like, well, if you're watching a recording of this, I'm not going to ask your question because it'll be too late. But if you're watching it live, uh, put a comment in the comment box. We're on Facebook Live. Recorded, we'll be on YouTube Live and at momondays.com. But put a comment in the comment box if there's a question you want me to ask Laura. Put it in there. Tell us the sound is good. Tell us the audio is good. Uh, Tell me my makeup looks. I'm just kidding. Yeah, right. Exactly. So, Laura, I don't know if you're going to hate me or love me for this question. What was it about your parents, or was there a coach or a? I was listening. Yeah. So what is it? There's look. I'll tell you. For me, I grew up as a little French Jewish kid in an English Protestant school in a French Catholic province. Didn't matter what group of kids I hung out with, I was always the odd one out. And that's what, thanks, Tim. Tim just said audio is good. Perfect. So that's what drove me always to be hypersensitive, hyper listening for what is unique about the other person. And that's how I got interested in story before I knew I was interested in story. What is it about your growing up, and there's more to my story, that but this is about you. So yeah, what is it? Was there a what was it about your parents? And
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that I also grew up feeling like I was the odd person out, but it had a very different effect on me. I didn't grow up thinking about the other person. I grew up thinking about myself. I grew up feeling so ridiculously insecure and uncertain and as if I felt like a man without an island. Like I wasn't cool enough for the cool kids, but I wasn't dorky enough for the dorky kids, but I didn't really fit anywhere. I was kind of in between and I didn't know where to put myself. So I think I spent most of my childhood worrying so much about what other people thought of me that I didn't think enough about them. So I actually think I had the opposite. Just if I'm going to be completely open, I
yeah.
think I had the opposite experience with it. I went to college. I was 16 years old when I went to college, so I was young. And I remember I had grown this very thick outer sarcastic shell, right? Just to like a good offense is a good defense, right? So I like put up the big sarcastic shell. I was like from Miami. I was sassy. I could just, I could, you know, banter with the best of them. And the very first day I was walking around the outside of my dorm building and a woman who I didn't really know that well at all, who has since become one of my dearest friends, bridesmaid at my wedding. She lived in my house for some time. I mean, just like an incredibly good friend. She made a comment like, I can't believe there's no ramps here. 'Cause there were just stairs, and I went, "Why, what are you in a wheelchair?" And she said, "No, but my mom is." And
Yeah.
I tell that story because, now 34 years later, I can look back on that and be like, "What a total horror show of a person I was." I was so busy trying to be, cool and sarcastic or that I didn't actually think about where the other person was coming from. And that was a pretty pivotal moment in my life because that was a moment where I realized that I should stop responding and I should start requesting, right? Stop responding with information, but start requesting information to when she said, "I can't believe there's not ramps here," to say like, "Why would you, be like, why are you looking for a ramp? Do you have somebody who needs that? Or why are you thinking about it?" I could have learned so much more about her in that moment. And
Uh,
fortunately, I learned a lot about myself in that moment. It helped me moving forward. But I now approach every conversation as just this great gift to get to know the other person. And when I'm on stage, I do the same thing. I mean, it is me talking, but it's a two-way conversation, and so they just don't say their part out loud, but it is an opportunity for me to see them, to see how they respond, to see how their body language shifts, to see, like, who's tweeting things, who's taking notes, who's nodding their heads, and just to be able to put myself in their shoes, even though I'm the one on stage, to consider them center stage and that I'm stage left is really the way I go about those things now.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned that was a pivot. I'm a professional speaker. I'll get this out, I promise. You mentioned pivotal moments. Uh, Sometimes I call them turning points. Sometimes I call that the low point. It's usually that pivotal moment is usually a low point in our lives, but it's the one where somehow we gain that unique perspective, that awareness that life could be different, I could be different, and it's those moments that are another teachable moments. And that's what you clearly you use that in your keynotes and your training, your facilitation. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. And like the you said it, I want to really applaud you and commend you, because if I had asked somebody else to talk about that, there would have been a reluctance, because it shows a vulnerability, it shows an insecurity, and it shows a weakness. It doesn't show me in my best light.
Mm.
And right, yeah, uh, and so there's a reluctance to talk about that. But when we are able to get through that and get the learning that comes from it, it that's where we gain our power. We turn it from a vulnerability to a superpower. And you say it so eloquently and so confidently, you own it. So good on you. Yeah. And you use
Thank
these,
you.
you mentioned earlier, right at the top, you said started in executive search. And then before that, it was in politics when you were first attracted to politics. Also mission driven. You didn't use that word when you talked about politics. We'll not talk about politics today. Anyway, mission driven, people who are mission driven, and where does that come from? And I pulled out a clip that I'd like to play for everybody. It's a clip of you at TEDx. It's just a minute and a bit, but it also talks about one of those pivotal moments. Stay tuned. Here it is.
25 years ago, I found myself standing in a small campaign office in Gainesville, Florida. And there was Bill Clinton. What would bring me to that office would be making one of the biggest mistakes of my life. But what I would come to learn in that office would frame everything that would come after. You see, when I was a young girl growing up in Miami, I would hear every night about horrible stories on the news: famine in Ethiopia, the AIDS crisis, unrest in the Middle East, race riots in the streets, and I would think to myself, something must be done. I would feel a calling to serve, and I would ask myself, how can I help? Well, the answer was clear. I would become the first female United States Senator from the great state of Florida.
Yeah. What was that like watching yourself on that?
That's horrible. You wanna hear a funny story about that talk?
Yeah.
That was literally the very first speech I have ever given in my life.
Holy cow. You're kidding.
Terrifying. 2,600 people, 3 mezzanines, gold-gilled walls, crystal chandeliers. It's where the Nutcracker performs, for God's sakes. That was my very first talk, and I can't watch it now because I am a TEDx talker.
Yeah.
It is so now I get on stage and I'm like, "Cocktail party me." But, oh, it's painful. It's painful to watch yourself.
Yeah. Did you ever watch that? I think it was a TED talk, but it's how to sound like an expert. And the guy's like spouting off
Yes.
total nonsense, but it's because he said, and here's the thing, what I am saying is absolute garbage. You know,
Yes.
so yeah, there's a way. I I try to get people to not do that. Uh,
Yes.
because I think what happens is uh, the audiences have become more sophisticated, and the more sophisticated they've gotten used to it, they say, "Oh, I know what she's doing. I know what he's doing." Right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Tim wrote. So we're getting comments in the comment box, and I can't remember how to put it. You know, copy it over to the main screen. So I'll say, Tim asks, curious if a TEDx talk was your first talk, how has that shaped your view of speaking, not being on the TED stage?
Oh, well, so when you give a TEDx, you have to give it in a very sort of tight time frame. It's like 8 to 18 minutes, and there is a very specific formula. There's a very specific way that you do it, and it is more of a rehearsed performance than a conversation. Um, I went to give that talk, and I thought that what I was doing was speaking.
Uh-huh.
And what I understand now is that being on stage is performing. And so that is one type of performance. When I'm on stage now, not being on a TEDx, and I'm asked to give a 30-minute or a 45-minute or a 60-minute keynote, I can be much more playful. I can be much more expansive. I look back on that talk and I see the things I did where, like, I told a joke and then I sort of like sat for a second and I let the audience laugh. Now I do it and I tell the joke and I'm like, I ham it up and I make a face and then I laugh again and I make another face and then I make a callback to it later. And I can be much more playful in the conversation that I have right now. The TEDx was like a performance, whereas now I get on stage and I'm storytelling. I have an arc of information that I want the audience to know. And I know that if I have a certain amount of time, there's a certain number of stories that I tell. And in those stories, there's like the short version and the long version. There's the like beginning of the story, a couple bits of information, the end of the story, or sometimes the beginning of the story, some information, the beginning of another story, some information. I wrap up one story, then I wrap up the next. And it really all just depends on how much time I have on stage and what the client wants me to do for them to, I ask every client, what do you want your audience to think or do differently after I get off stage than before I got on stage? And from there, I like work some of those things in. And it's much more interactive being on stage now than TEDx, which is like you're there, you do a thing, and you go.
Yeah. But sounds like you have a similar process as I do. I've got a series of stories. I know the message is always more than one possible message that you could pull out of it, but you know what they
Mhm.
are. It's going to be one, two, or three, and you know those stories so well that you can pull them out. Obviously, you map it out ahead of time,
Mhm.
but you could cut one in the middle, come back to it, which is called an open loop, by the way, in NLP. You know that
Yeah.
really, really, because it makes people want to remember the ending, but it
Yeah.
takes skill to be able to do that. It takes skill to be able to do that,
Yeah.
not get lost on your own. A question I get
Well,
asked very
wait,
often.
let me say, the thing about the TEDx, like, the way that the TEDx started is I got up on stage and I'm like, "Let me talk about myself for a little bit." And the way I tell the story now, so anybody who watches it, the 11 and a half minutes of the talk, the way that I tell the story now is I get on stage and I start the talk in the middle.
Mm,
So the middle of the talk, I talk about how the whole talk is about the idea that we're asking the wrong question. We're not solving problems because we're asking, how can I help? And putting ourselves in the center of the problem rather than asking a better question, which is what needs to happen, which puts the problem at the center and allows the problem to identify the solution so that we can decide whether or not we're the right person or somebody else should be. And I give as one of the examples, the 67,000 teddy bears that descended on Newtown, Connecticut after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. So when I get on stage now, I literally walk on stage and I say 67,000, 67,000, 67,000 teddy bears descended on Newtown, Connecticut after a gunman shot 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Do you know how many teddy bear 67,000 is? It's enough to fill this entire room, a high school gymnasium, an Olympic-sized swimming pool twice. And what happens to these teddy bears? Some of them end up in the hands of small children, these tiny rays of hope that we wish they are, but most of them end up being incinerated. And then I, talk a little bit about this, how there's nothing wrong with sending a teddy bear. It comes from the best part of humanity, yada, 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 yada. But I realized that the reason we do this is because we are confusing action for impact. It all started when I walked into a campaign office, blah, 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 blah.
And then
So I,
you weave
boom,
that back in. Yeah, that's
yes.
masterful. Very well done.
So, and that was Michael Port, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, I don't care about the first 6 minutes where you're talking about yourself.
Yeah.
So start at the point that I care about, and then tell me why you're the relevant person.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, we
Got it.
all need extra ears to listen for
Yes.
what's genuinely interesting.
Yes.
I need that for myself. That's what I do for the people that I coach. And I've coached people who have spoken in front
Yes.
of Congress. I've coached people who have spoken at TEDx, and I've done,
Yep.
same idea. A question that I get asked a lot, and I know what my answer is, but I'm curious to know what yours is. You mentioned you've got a long story, a long version and a short version. What is that? What's a short version? What's a long version for you? In minutes.
Oh, a short version. Well, it depends. So most of my stories are anywhere between like 7 to 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like the bits, right? So depending on how long of a talk it is, I can do the story in like 5 or 6 minutes, or I can do it in, 14 or 15 minutes. I just sort of expand it and I put in more details and I tell stories within the stories.
Well,
I actually have a
wait a minute, wait a
spreadsheet.
minute. So when you tell a story within a story, it's no longer 15 minutes is a hugely long story, but that's when
Yeah.
you tell a story within a story. So if you just break
Yes.
it down to the story, right? That's what
Mhm.
I'm asking. What do you think it is? A short version?
Uh, 2 minutes. Long
Yeah.
version is probably
That
6 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a spreadsheet actually where I have all of the bits in my talk. So there's like the intro bit, the outro bit, then there's the 3 lies you tell yourself bit, then there's the 4 C's of consonants bit, there's so there's all the different bits, and I could go through the 4 C's of consonants without telling you any stories. I could go through the 4 C's of consonants just telling you one story about how I came up with them. I can go through the 4 C's of consonants telling you about each C. Each of the 4 C's has a story. But I have a spreadsheet that actually has them all listed out with a link to the slide that I use when I talk about it. So my slides are just like big pictures. There's not really a lot of words on my slide except for words like consonants, right? Like,
And
that's
I
it.
want to get to
Um,
that. I want to get to that.
okay. And then there's short version and long version, right?
Yeah.
The time. So then when I get asked to do a keynote, if they're like, you have 37 minutes, I can literally like just cut and paste the lines and I could build out my talk that way. And I'm like, okay, then I know exactly how long the talk is going to take.
Yeah, this is funny. I know that anybody who's ever been coached by me, and there are lots of people on the call right now watching the not on the call, but on the live stream, watching it now. They know that I'm all about I'm looking around for an index cards. You use a spreadsheet the way I
I
use
use a
an index
spreadsheet. Yep.
card, and each
Hmm.
element goes on an index card. Why an index card? Because it allows me to visually, physically move them around. So what happens if I put this element over here? What if right? But it sounds like I'm going to make up a word. Granularization. That's what you're
I'll
doing.
allow
Yeah, thank you.
it.
Thank you. All right, listen. I want to move on because you've got so much that's interesting about you, Laura, that you just wrote a book called Limitless. You have a online training and coaching program where you help people live in a way that's limitless, that's really getting at the core. And the word that keeps popping up over and over again is consonance. You mentioned it
Yes.
earlier. I made a little mental note. What do you mean by consonance, and how does it figure into all this? And how should, if I want to live my life limitless, what does it mean?
So during the 20 years that I did executive search, 5 years for one of the best firms in the country that did this work, and then 15 years after I had a moment of rage and thought I could do it better, doing it on my own, which is a story that I'll get to. I interviewed thousands of people in these massive moments of bowel shaking career shift, right? And I helped steward organizations in some pretty tremendously worrisome moments of disruption. And here's what you get to here's what the job is of an executive recruiter. I have clients. I'm a retained executive recruiter. So I have clients who call me who say, we need a new CEO for our organization. Go find us the best person there is out there. So my job is to find the very best people, the most successful people, the bold faced names, the ones who we know can get the job done, and convince them to take this job for an organization they may not have heard of, a job they didn't know existed, and certainly from a headhunter who they definitely did not know existed. So that sounds like a pretty hard job, right? Call the most successful people in the world and get them to leave and do something else. The job was made actually quite easy because despite all the success, they weren't all that happy. Here's what I learned, that most people are carrying around a scorecard in their back pocket that says bigger, better, faster, more, get the right job, get the right house, get the right spouse, have the right kids, send them to the right dance programs, or whatever it is. You will be successful when you get this bumper sticker on the back of your car that says you sent your kid to Harvard, check, right? Like we all have this scorecard that
And
was
it's a
given to us
moving
by
target,
somebody else.
right?
And it's a moving target. And we think that the success, like I'll be happy when, is always on the next, on the other side of the next job, the next promotion, the next whatever. And here's what I came to learn, that success doesn't equal happiness because we're all chasing someone else's version of someone else's idea of someone else's success. So my job of calling all these people and convincing them to think about taking this other job was made much easier because despite all the success that they had on their scorecard, they filled out all the, check boxes. They weren't very happy and they were eager to learn about if there was something better, if the grass is greener on the other side. And I started to think about the small handful of people that I could not recruit away, and also my own life deciding to drop out of law school and join that presidential campaign, working in the White House, helping to create AmeriCorps, leaving that to become a headhunter, then realizing that there was a better, faster, different way to do this work, and starting my own firm, and then eventually selling that firm when I realized it wasn't doing it for me anymore, and starting this career as an author and a speaker. I also did some things. So what I found was that it's not happiness, it's not success we look for, it's consonance, alignment, flow. Michelle, when the very best of what you do is being called upon to solve a problem you actually care about, and you're being rewarded for solving that problem in a way that is meaningful to you, whether it's financial or karmic or whatever it is. Those moments?
Mm.
Those are the moments when you're in consonance, when what you do matches who you are. We think that exhaustion comes from being too busy, that burnout comes from being too busy, but really it comes from the costume changes and the code shifting to be different people in different audiences all the time. So consonance is this alignment, it's this flow, it's this harmony, so that you can bring the very best of who you are to the things you actually care about and be rewarded for ways that are meaningful to you. And what I learned is that continence is made up of 4 particular things. And because I'm a self-helper and I get on stage as a personal development person, of course, they all have to start with C because, gotta have a thing. So they are, and I'll just really quickly, calling, connection, contribution, and control. Calling being that gravitational force, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, the business you want to build, the leader you want to serve, the cause that you want to solve, a family you want to nurture. Your calling, your purpose for you and you alone.
So let me ask you, can you have more than
Yeah,
one?
absolutely. You can have we have this idea that like people are just born with a calling, they're born with a purpose. And we think that, first of all, it has to be like higher purpose, lofty purpose. Like if you don't get to heaven and you got Mother Teresa, Mother Teresa chops, St. Peter's gonna like take the abacus and be like, nope, sorry, you're out of here. And the truth is that your purpose is just your purpose. Like if your purpose is curing cancer, awesome. If your purpose is getting yourself out of debt so that your family, your children can make decisions you didn't have the privilege to make, awesome. If your calling is just to buy a beach house and a Maserati, that's awesome too. It just has to be yours. And we get it wrong because we give votes in our lives to all the people who shouldn't even have voices. But we think that it has to be one thing when in fact it changes. We change. Yours is going to be different than mine, but yours is also different 7 years ago than it is now. And it's going to
I'm
be different
so
10 years
glad to
from
hear
now
you
than it is
say
there.
this. I think people confuse you know, we've been fed a load of positivity over the last 50 years,
Yes.
right? And one of them is, you know, what's your passion? I've never gotten a good answer. I
Yeah.
mean, what the answer I get is the one that they think they should be telling me. What's your passion? What drives you? All those positive questions. I want to make
Yeah.
another point, though. It's another one of those moments where I've got too much in my brain coming out of one little mouth. But you mentioned how you tap into people. What I heard you say was really you're tapping into their negativity, which is a great motivator. I know it's not popular, but that's how, unfortunately, we're wired. Now
Yeah, I mean, I think
you
I tap
change
into their
that
positivity too.
internally. I think you
Yeah.
change that internally for ourselves when you help us understand the elements of your definition of consonance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I tap into both the negativity and the positivity. I just tap into the emotion. There's just emotion one way or another. But on the idea of passion, I have to tell you that I think that follow your passion
Oh,
is the world's
oh.
worst advice. Like it is the spoken word illegitimate sister of the live, love, laugh tattoo. It
Yeah.
is just it is like it's not a destination. It's not a pathway. It makes no sense at all. And it's actually dangerous because it is forced upon us by these Instafluencers and their like boho chic and their feather crowns and they're like follow your passion as if as soon as you find your passion it's all going to be perfect. And what happens is if you find your passion and then you don't succeed immediately, you're like, oh, I guess that must not have been my passion. I should do something
Or
else.
I'm
When in
not good
fact,
enough,
or I'm not good enough.
or all of
Right.
those.
When
Yeah.
Right, when in fact, it's like your passion, like you're going to fail and succeed and fail and succeed. You're going to fall down and get back up. And that's what, like, you're passionate about it. You should want to perfect it. Doesn't your passion deserve that? So, I think follow your passion is like invest in your passion. Don't just follow your passion, like invest in it and know it's going to kick the crap out of you until you get it right. But I think that that's really part of it. And I think so many of us can serve so many callings, but when we conflate your calling with your passion and we take life advice from girls in flower crowns, that's just like, why are we taking girl life advice from girls in flower crowns anyway? It doesn't make any sense at all to me.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
funny.
that's
I've
my issue with
never.
that passion.
Yeah. You are the living demonstration of something that I believe in, and that is that. And I'll explain it. Uh, I've never gotten a good answer if you ask somebody what's your passion or what do you love to do. I've never gotten a good answer going down that route, but I
Yeah.
have gotten a good answer when I ask what really drives you up the wall,
Mm,
because that taps into the emotion of the problem you want to solve. And I think just hearing the emotion that you spoke 30 seconds ago with um and it's clearly a problem in the world that you are driven or called to solve, which is help people get off the wrong, misguided somebody else's track.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, that is the first C of continence is calling. Like, what is it that you want to do? What is the problem you want to solve in the world? What is the business you want to build? The second, I think, is where a lot of us get wrong is connection. Like, does my work actually matter? Like, I'm so busy trying to get to inbox zero. I'm so, busy trying to return all these emails and get this to-do list done. And but at the same time, my calendar, the priorities of my calendar are being dictated by somebody else's priorities. So, does your work actually matter? Does it actually connect to that calling that you want to serve? And I think that's where, so many self-help books are written about like how do you manage your time and how do you make sure you get everything done? But the question is like, should you be getting this stuff done anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's two C's.
Yeah. The third C is contribution. And this is where I would give an impassioned plea to anybody who's listening who feels like ambition is a dirty word. It's not. The third C is contribution. How does this work contribute to your life? Does it pay you the kind of money that you want for the lifestyle that you need? Is it giving you an opportunity to manifest your values on a daily basis? Is it allowing you to be part of the career trajectory that's going to set you up for the life that you want? How does this work actually? Like if connection's all about the work, contribution's really all about you. So, you know, often when I give this talk to rooms of women, I've given this talk in a room of 5,000 women, and I was like, "How many of you feel comfortable saying, 'I am ambitious'?" And, like, 3 hands go up, and it's usually a couple of the sound guys in the back or something, like, the women don't say this, and, no offense to men, I love men, I'm married to a man, but ladies, ambition is not a dirty word. And if you feel like it is, here's the question. Would having more time, more money, more resources, more leverage, more power, more whatever allow you to show up better for the people you love and the causes you hold dear? Yeah, of course it would, right? So it's not your ambition, it's your responsibility. And when I do that in, when I give talks, women are like, "Oh, I feel much better about wanting for myself now because I understand that it's for other people." So that's the 3rd C. And then the 4th one is control. I see Wendy saying, "I am ambitious." Yes. Um, woo! And by the way, it's great when I do these talks, when I do the keynotes, now, I can get, like, all the women on, like, put it in the chat and shout it at 'em, like, "I'm ambitious," and it is, like, the most empowering thing ever to, like, see, like, woman after woman after woman after woman be like, "I am ambitious," and it's a really fun thing to do in terms of bringing other people into the story. So the 4th C is control. And I am like, I'm a control freak of the highest order. Like, I don't think I'm going to survive the fiery ball of death that is the airplane crash, but I still like to sit on the aisle because I just like the illusion of control so much as my need for control. So, as you can imagine, COVID's been a little tricky for someone like me. But control answers the question, do you have the control in your career? Do you have personal agency to be on to get yourself on the team that's gonna get the right assignments, to be able to, figure out how much your hustle is going to result in earning money, to be able to decide where the philanthropic dollars of your company go? Can you control the things you care about? Can you control how much your work connects to the calling and how much it contributes to your life? And each one of us at every age and at every life stage will want each of these 4 Cs in different amounts. So when I was young, dropping out of law school to join that presidential campaign, I had no contribution whatsoever. I was getting paid in like all the ramen soup and idealism I could eat. But I was so inspired by Bill Clinton, and I couldn't wait to serve and help create this idea. I had no connection. I was getting the coffee for the guy who got the coffee, who got the guy who got the coffee. I didn't matter. And control, I didn't know if they were gonna send me to Little Rock or Minnetonka. Like there was nothing. But I knew that if this guy won, he might have a pretty interesting career, and I might get to go along with him, and that could be an interesting trajectory. Now, I'm turning 50 in a couple weeks and I'm a princess. I don't work for ramen soup anymore. Like, this matters to me. I've got 2 teenage kids. I need to be home to be there for those really important moments. Like, there are my calculus now, see? Another C. My calculus now is different than it was then, and it's going to be different 10 years from now. So, but I think what happens is we get sent down a path. Pick a job, pick a major, pick a trade, pick a university, and we go, "Okay, that's who I'm gonna be now." The problem is, as you know, when we get asked that question, we're usually 16, 17, 18 years old, and what do we not have when we're 16, 17, 18 years old? Frontal lobe, like, the part of the brain that helps dictate good decision making, so we're asked to make this
That's been
decision.
proven. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have a 16 and 18-year-old, I can tell you there's no frontal lobe. There's 2 frontal lobes in my house of 4 right now, so I can tell you that. But, we're asked to make this decision that's gonna affect the rest of our lives before we literally have the capacity to make good, solid, logical ones. So, is it any wonder we wake up one day and we're like, "I did all the right things. Why aren't I happy?" So, it is a matter of constantly thinking about what's your personal calculus? What's your rubric for how much calling, connection, contribution, and control you want?
Very cool. In the little time that we have left, we've got maybe a minute and a half,
Minute.
and I know that right after this, we're going into the backstage, and you're going to be meeting with some of the members of community. I know there are a lot of people already listening. This is blowing up with hearts and thumbs up and stuff like that. Um, so 2 things. First of all, hold up your book, please. There we go. Thank you.
There we go. Paperback and
Limitless.
hardback.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice cover, by the way. Really, really nice cover. Good job. And where can people find out about you?
So my name is Laura Gassner Otting. You can see down below lauragassnerotting.com, but all my good friends call me LGO. So I am Hey LGO on all the socials. And also heylgo.com is a great shortcut to my website.
Awesome. And just parting words, if somebody came to you and says, Laura, I love your approach, I love your philosophy, I'm sold, on wanting to live limitless and not, getting off of somebody else's track. How do I do it? What would and you're not going to give them the whole coaching program in 30 seconds, but what would be something they can start?
Well, the best place for them to start would be to go to limitlessassessment.com. Now, I warn you, it's a long quiz. It's about 67 questions, which was kind of a big mistake of mine because I thought, everybody wants to do this. But here's the thing, if you've been listening for 45 minutes and you're like, yeah, I'm picking up what she's laying down, this is your life. It's an intense quiz. You should be intense about your life. Pour yourself a glass of scotch or a brandy snifter of OJ, pull up limitlessassessment.com and learn how much calling, connection, contribution, and control you want and how much you actually have. And then it'll give you some very specific tips on what you can do in order to get those things in your life. And if you're interested, of course, heylgo.com/learn is where you can find information on my course that goes deeper into all these things. It's about 4 hours, I think, in total, and it's got a 70-page workbook that comes with it. So there's lots more of any of this right there for
Awesome.
you.
Awesome. And it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how worthwhile is it for us to look to live limitless and look for consonance in our own lives? There's only one answer. You know
I mean, you got one big juicy life. That's all you get. Like,
Exactly.
why not live it? There's no do-over. This isn't for practice.
Love it.
10, 10, 10,
Laura,
10
yeah,
across the
10 or
board.
20 or no, we're going to do the, oh God, now what's the movie? We're going to turn it to 11.
Yeah, this one goes to 11.
Yeah, right. That's the one.
That's actually the second time I've said that today. That's
Right.
really bizarre.
Laura, thank you so much. You're so generous with us, and I think what you're saying is so aligned with what I personally believe in. We do, I think, pretty much the same things, although we do it very, very differently. Yeah, Spinal Tap. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. It's like that's what happens when you get old. Yeah, phenomenal. We'll see you in backstage in a few minutes. Feel
Yes.
free to go in ahead of me. I'm going to wrap up here, and we're going to see you soon. Thank you, Laura. So you've been watching another episode of moTV, where every month we bring you interesting people, interesting speakers, always around the topic of storytelling and how it makes such a huge impact in our lives, how we could use it, and how we can make better use of it. And it just has how it touches on every aspect of who we are, what we do, how we do it, all of that stuff. I'm thrilled that today we had a great conversation with Laura, where I'm going to hop into the backstage with her for members of the Mo Mondays community. If you want to find out more about Laura, it's lauragassnerotting.com, if I remember correctly, but it was on there. And if you want to find out more about Mo Mondays, it's literally momondays.com. Thank you very much, and we will see you next month.